Hunger Free Minnesota is a statewide collaborative effort working with corporate leaders and nonprofits who are committed to joining forces to close the 100 million missing meal gap in our state. Everyone here today has a stake in helping us achieve this goal.
This economy, as it's evolving, this intensely competitive global economy, it's always important to be efficient, and companies are more efficient, nonprofits are more efficient, doing more with less, but it's really about creativity and innovation. And part of that creativity and innovation are partnerships.
In terms of a public-private partnership that exists with Hunger Free Minnesota, one of the things that attracted Cargill to looking at solutions that can deal with the food security issues that we have in the state of Minnesota is largely this idea of working across areas, if you will, or segments. It only happens when you have a collaborative effort with the best thinking going into this from both the nonprofit world as well as from the private sector.
When you look at the issues that come from food insecurity, poor nutritional habits, sometimes lack of access to nutritional food, it really is the root cause of so many of our healthcare challenges today.
We tend to define the issue of food insecurity in terms of four broad cohorts, right? So we've got an elderly population, we've got long-term unemployed that tends to have a very high degree of overlap with disability. We've got the working poor, and then the last category is families with children. And the good news is that families with children actually participate at a very, very high rate in the SNAP program. So we're getting to them, but we still need to find ways to break down those barriers, reduce the amount of stigma associated with various food programs.
So we put the first million in a few years ago into the Hunger Exchange, feeling that this is a terrific idea. We've made great progress, and we've put another million in today because we're about on the verge of the next stage. There are new tools. We're going to be doing more micro-targeting.
We recognize that around the state there was a lot of effort to fight hunger, but really what was going to take to end hunger around Minnesota, and is there a way that we could look at the community level and understand what does hunger really look like? And so a big push for this research was to define hunger in terms of meal gaps and food insecurity. So how many meals are people missing? And what we were able to find is that around the state of Minnesota, based upon the 2010 census data, food insecure Minnesotans likely missed about 100 million meals.
We can define what the gap is, and that was an amazing thing to me, because without understanding what the gap is, we really can't figure out how to close it. But more importantly, what was surprising to me is that actually we have more than enough opportunity in this state to close the gap. And looking at the sources around retail rescue, around agricultural surplus, through government programs, that this isn't a question of do we have the capacity, do we have the capability to get it done? It's really more a question around coordination.
The Twin Cities metro area actually accounts for about 50% of the missing meals in Minnesota, but then that's only 50%. This research took place at the census tract level, and rural census tracts in Minnesota actually account for about 40% of the missed meals around the state. Particularly in rural areas, it's hard for people to get to a food shelf, right? So we need to depend to a greater extent on getting them enrolled in SNAP or the schools, whereas there are in many cases urban areas that already actually have a wide availability of services, but the gap is so big that we need to collaborate better to get it done.
This is a statewide issue. How do we actually bring all these groups together in a fashion that they all are going towards the same goal, but how do we actually make sure they work together towards that goal? And not in we're going to tell you what to do, but how do we make sure we foster the collaboration, facilitate the discussions? And the data is just one of those tools, one of those elements to foster those conversations.
So building upon the community close-up research that you just saw, that was just presented by Dan and David, we've been working with communities across the state of Minnesota to develop data-driven strategies as well as action plans to close missing meals gaps at the community level.
Think about replication, think about quality, think about efficiency, because there's never enough money. Think about effectiveness. These programs were chosen by the grant panel because they met those requirements. Tell us about the work that you're being funded for and what a difference you think that will make.
Second Harvest Heartland is just one of several engaged partners in a pilot around an organization or a product called Efforts to Outcome that we call ETO. And ETO is a cloud-based database that has come out of a need that agency partners have expressed, One for how do we find some just efficiency and cost savings in technological and data solutions that we've been looking for, as well as how do we get better data, both to make better decisions and make sure that we're reporting back to our donors numbers that are going to be useful for all of us to understand what hunger looks like in our communities.
We do rescue a lot of food. We're really fortunate in Marshall, Minnesota. We rescue an average of 30,000 pounds a month. And we only want to expand on that too. So there is no food in Southwest Minnesota that is going to waste in our area, but we want to expand this into the restaurants.
In a view that food is part of health and part of medicine, our efforts to try to connect families who are struggling with healthy foods have taken place over years. And in the recent years, a piece of that has been establishing a food shelf in the hospital. So one of our challenges has been talking to people about why in a hospital. But when you think about what a hospital has to offer, this is really an infrastructure that deserves some real thought.
We're going to use this money to promote, engage, and educate the community, the kids, the parents, and the administrators of the benefits of breakfast in the classroom. Our goal is to increase participation from 40% to 60% for breakfast. That will roughly translate into 750,000 meals in a school year.
It's really been phenomenal for those of us that are serving on the Hunger Free Minnesota team to look at these proposals and to have the opportunity to see the real creativity and innovation that is coming through by the people that are working at the local level, and the creative ways in which you're looking for ways to partner with other organizations. Great examples. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here today.